Friends, I am glad to welcome you to my channel, and today's lesson I called Watercolor Effects. I strongly recommend that you not just watch this video, but also try to make it with me. In today's lesson, in addition to basic materials such as a brush, paper, water, palette, and watercolor, we will also need any alcohol. I will have vodka, salt, and spray, such a small pulverizer with water. So, I cover the first rectangle with water. This is an exercise. We did it already in the first lesson. Today, we will make one square in the same technique. We choose any two colors and just try to observe how they spread on a wet surface. Additionally, I did not wet the paper in any way. I have 300 grams of paper per meter, 100% cotton, but you know it's not Sanderson. On Wildberry, I ordered paper with the same characteristics. It costs much cheaper, but I still see a difference in quality with the paper that I usually dry. I choose two colors. In my case, it's iron oxide and indigo, and look at how they spread on a wet surface. Sometimes I didn't just put a dot with a brush, but I just dripped paint. I don't wet the second rectangle with water anymore. I choose the same colors and see how they fit together. In other words, my task is simply to draw spots like spots on a leopard, approximately. But in principle, here as you want more. And then, I take the same color of iron oxide and look at how they fit together on dry paper. Of course, it is desirable that you do not wait for one color to dry out, but immediately start working with the second color and watch how they fit together. And in fact, even on dry paper, the color that you take, it can be of different humidity. I can take a little more water, a little less water. And now, even now, you can notice how in some joints I have more water, and the paint flows into each other more, and in some places, a slightly less wet brush, and the paint does not spread out like that. You know, I also want to say about the paper, but I will tell you again that if you do not have such paper with such characteristics, 300 grams per meter and 100% cotton, there's nothing wrong with that. Take ordinary watercolor paper, 200 grams per meter, 180 grams per meter, and do all the same exercises. Do not think that somehow you will not succeed. Everything is fine. You can work on simpler materials. Well, this exercise gives us an idea of how watercolor behaves on a wet surface in general, and how it behaves on a drier surface, and how we have two colors on a wet surface and two colors on a dry surface. I paint over the second square, and this is the effect I got. But you know, this is still, of course, not the final option. We have to wait. If you watch the first square, it continues to spread, which is fine. Watercolor, on the other hand, we love that it has the property of flowing like this, and over time it will change again. These two rectangles will change. That is, as it dries, it can spread even further in the first square. So, We proceed to the third square. I take the indigo color and paint it over completely tightly. After I have painted it over tightly, I will need to drop water droplets on this square. This is where I'm going to use the spray as well. We'll just drop clean water on top, and I'll use a spray on the bottom. Such small, sprays, small bulletizers if I may say so. They are sold in a fixed price, for 50 rubles, a small jar. I have a slightly different jar, a big one. I had it from some kind of hair product. I just poured water in there. Look, I'm dripping. And we're also watching what happens to it, how we have it, what kind of spreads, spills occur. And I sprinkled the edge a little bit. It's not very clearly visible on the camera, but there are such small inclusions there. Somewhere you can pour a little more water with a brush. As my main color dries out, I covered the rectangle with indigo, and we start dripping water there. Here, depending on the degree of drying, different iridescences will turn out. You can paint over and, for example, on 1/3, mentally divide this rectangle into 3 parts. On the first third, immediately drip water, then wait a little while when you dry out, and on the second third drip water. And well, in general, this is how to act, because it really can turn out different options. The fourth square, I also completely paint over the iron oxide paint I have, and here I'm going to salt it now. With salt, of course, there are also such quirks, if I may say so. It also depends on the degree of drying of the water. Right now, the effect on the camera won't be very visible, but at the end, I'll take a close-up shot and show what I got. On darker tones, there may be a brighter effect from the salt. Ideally, it can also give a very beautiful drawing, similar, as frost draws such patterns on glass, like a snowflake under a microscope. Well, it can be beautiful. Here's a little bit of it I have now started to manifest, but in full what happened, we'll see a little later. So friends, we are moving on to the fifth square. I mixed indigo and emerald green paint here. And I'm going to start dripping vodka on her now. I poured a little vodka into a separate lid, washed the brush, squeezed it thoroughly from the water that I had on the brush, and started dripping the same thing as with salt, as with water. Depending on the degree of drying, different effects are obtained. You can do exactly the same, but here are the upper ones. While I'm painting the leaf, I have the upper part of the leaf already. The upper part of the rectangle has already started to dry out slowly, so I don't have to wait for anything much here. This beautiful shade is obtained by mixing indigo and emerald green. In the third square, I have indigo, but in the fifth one, I add green emeralds. You can see how they differ from each other. Well, it turns out such beautiful effects, similar to jellyfish. I honestly couldn't stop doing it. Indeed, at least this activity has produced some kind of therapeutic effect on me. So friends, if you have any sadness in your heart, then go down to Pyateroshka, buy yourself a bottle of vodka. By the way, I also snatched a compliment on this ground in the form of a request to show my passport and enjoy the creativity and these wonderful overflows that you get. Well, look what happened with us. I'll show you the top row of our rectangles a little closer. With salt, nothing is still clear. The third square is very beautiful. The second square is how the mixes and the second square turned out. Then you look at them, compare what it means to write raw and what it means to write dry. Indeed, sometimes we have to have such moments when we write dry. What happens in the fifth square does not necessarily mean that you will get the same picture at the exit when completely dry. Here, too, everything is very unpredictable, but in principle, what I got after this fifth rectangle dried, I was also pleasantly surprised and pleased. Such beautiful, just some unusual patterns turned out to be drawn. What are we doing with the sixth square? Look at this. I draw stripes with such a pale solution. You can make absolutely any pattern so that there is more water left on these strips. Here, with this exercise, I want to show you that watercolor spreads only where it is wet. Yes, right now, that is, we have determined with these, so to speak, guides, where we allow it to flow. And then, if I take a color on a brush and start doing this watercolor, poking along these stripes, then the watercolor will spread only over the places where you walked with water. This also makes us think when we draw, and we will draw still lifes, landscapes with you. Sometimes I will say, yes, we are just wetting this piece, and already working on it. You don't have to repeat one-on-one what I do, you can. The main thing is that you just understand the principle. In general, you can initially draw any ornament with water. You can draw a heart, a Christmas tree, a snowflake, any kind of ornament. And then just like that, bail, poke with different colors and make sure that it will float away only within the framework of those places that you wet. You know, I don't use some effects so often, for example, salt and vodka, but it's extremely rare, I can't even remember. Although after this exercise, I somehow wanted to practice. And here, for example, is what I'm going to do now, our seventh square. This is the seventh, eighth square. This is what we will often encounter. You know, with a semi-dry brush. I took a squirrel, but you can do it with bristles. You can also do it with a synthetic brush. It is very good if the paper has a medium or coarse grain. On paper with fine grain, this is more difficult to do. Well, as you understand, when drawing seascapes, that's when we write water. Now, even if you look at this rectangle, it reminds, yes, something like a calm sea on such a sunny day, so that our water glitters. Here, in fact, I use it, and we will definitely draw some simple landscape to the sea, where we will use it. Here, practice, please. This is exactly the moment I use often. And the next eighth square, which is also quite often, is the technique that I use. So we just take a line, draw it with any color that you like, after which I wash the brush, and then with water, I just draw a line. Thereby, first in the color of the line, I washed the brush in the water completely, and now with ordinary water once and took it away, so that the line floated in different directions. This is almost constantly in my still lifes. You can also practice. This is a very running trick. That's it. Well, friends, thank you very much for watching. Be sure to practice. It's not going anywhere. It's a contribution to yourself as a watercolor artist. All these tasks and exercises are all good for you, although it seems possible that some kind of daub, yes, you drew something, sat down, but in fact there is not. Thus, you begin to understand watercolor, its character, where and when it flows, how to pacify it. Well, look at what kind of water I got, what kind of spreads I got. I removed the salt from the fourth rectangle. The effect is slightly visible, but still the effect is minimal from the salt. Here is such a beautiful matrix of some kind. I do not know, maybe you can somehow try to draw water lilies on the water and use vodka in this way, because something reminded me of water lilies on the water. In the next lesson in watercolor, we will draw some kind of landscape or some kind of picture. I will prepare a simple one, and we will take such a small break for a picture here, and then we will go back to our watercolor exercises. In this way we will alternate. Thank you very much for watching. I wish you creative success, and all the best to you and your loved ones. See you again on my channel.